What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be checking out the new TCL 10 Pro. So let's go ahead and unbox this device and see what the TCL 10 Pro has to offer. Inside the box, the first thing we're greeted by is the phone itself. I'll put the 10 Pro aside for just a second so we can see what else comes inside the package. Digging a little deeper here, the first thing we get is a little cardboard packet, and inside you'll find the quick start guide and some documentation, as well as an included clear rubbery case you can use to protect your brand new phone. What's kind of interesting with this case is that TCL sort of branded it with their slogan "Display Greatness" right across the back, so obviously trying to promote the brand there every chance they get. Also included in the box is the charger and cable, of course. You get a USB-A to USB-C cable and a TCL branded wall plug, and this is an 18-watt fast charger, which is great to see. So with all that out of the way, here is the new TCL 10 Pro itself. And right off the bat, I have to say, I think this is a really good looking phone. The TCL 10 Pro is a 6.47-inch smartphone with curved front glass, an aluminum housing, really interesting finish across the back, and plenty of cameras to choose from, obviously. Beyond that, I think what we do have here is actually a really good looking phone. The first thing I noticed right away is how good this device feels in the hand. It's heavy, it's sturdy, and the metal frame really gives off a premium vibe. It may not have the glossy faux glass finish or shiny rainbow colorway of some other phones, but I don't think it needs it. The gradient finish over the smooth rear housing is good enough, and you get this sort of metal sheen that I think looks really nice. Taking a look around, you can see that the 10 Pro offers curved edges and a contoured design that makes everything feel slimmer and sleeker. I like that the sides sort of slope down into a thinner profile, but I know that curved front glass isn't a design choice that everyone likes nowadays. I personally do appreciate it. It's something I miss, but I know from time to time with such slim bezels and sloping sides that the edge of the screen can be accidentally touched, which triggers something you didn't want it to do, and that the keyboard may get a little distorted on the edges, which might make things tough to type. Like I said, for me, neither of these things are an issue. I liked the curved screen, but I know not everyone does, which is why I wanted to just take some time to go over it. Across the top, you might be able to tell that the 10 Pro has a teardrop camera notch, which sort of gets hidden by the default wallpaper, but it is there. And towards the bottom, there's a tiny bit of a chin, but not really too much. And all in all, for a 2020 phone in general, but especially a phone at this price point, I don't think there's a single thing wrong with the overall design of this phone. And by the way, here's what the 10 Pro looks like with that included case on. It's not a bad phone case, really, a little loose, but it kind of makes it easier to take off. And across the back, you can see their slogan there. The little square in the middle even borders the actual TCL logo on the phone. And while it is nice that a case was included at least, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of all the text and branding. On the left side of the phone, you'll find a dedicated smart key. This is your Google Assistant button, but it can also be customized to other things like launching the camera or other apps or disabling or enabling a setting, which is great. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to customize that button. On the right, there's the power and volume switches. Up top, you'll see the headphone jack and an IR blaster, which you don't really find on too many smartphones nowadays. And at the bottom, there's the SIM and SD card tray, USB-C port, and the speaker. Across the back, obviously, we have a whole bunch of camera stuff, and I'll go more in depth with that in a minute. But one other thing I want to mention is the fingerprint reader. The 10 Pro has an in-display sensor, and while I'm usually not a fan of this setup, I think the target area is big enough, the placement makes sense, and I've actually had less issues and inconsistencies with this fingerprint reader than I have with the likes of the Samsung A series phones, for example. In addition, you can also utilize Face Unlock, which I found to be really fast, so both unlocking methods here seem to be really solid. Now let's talk about the display. And there's actually something pretty important here that I want to go over. First off, the screen itself is a nearly 6.5-inch 2340 by 1080 AMOLED panel that packs about 398 pixels per inch. By itself, this is a solid screen, and you should expect that from TCL given how good their TVs are. AMOLED is the right choice at this price range. You get really punchy colors, deep blacks, and a viewing experience that's on par with anything else in this price range and beyond. It's a good looking looking screen on its own, but TCL wanted to take things a step further by offering their NXTVISION display engine. To put it simply, this is a mode you can enable if you want that basically will bring up the saturation and contrast and make your content look brighter and more colorful automatically, in sort of the same way that HDR attempts to improve the picture, which by the way, the 10 Pro also has. Now, for the most part, I think NXTVISION will be more of a personal preference thing. It's not necessary, and I know oversaturating the screen isn't everyone's first choice. It also isn't something that you can really tell all the time. It sort of depends on what content you're watching. But just in my initial impressions, I found that every once in a while, NXTVISION can make things look a bit oversaturated. I want to do some more tests with some different content, obviously, so I can get a better understanding of the differences for my full review. But either way, I do think the display on the 10 Pro is really solid. I appreciate the extra viewing mode enhancements that are at least there for you to customize, and I don't have any complaints with what's offered. Inside, the 10 Pro packs the Qualcomm Snapdragon 675 processor, Adreno 612 GPU, 6GB of RAM, and 128GB of USF 2.1 storage. Here are the Geekbench and Antutu benchmark scores so you can get a numeric value for the performance, 502 for the single core score and 1622 for the multi-core score on Geekbench, and a combined 221,987 on Antutu. TCL's software experience seems particularly good, and a well-optimized OS may make up for a slightly underpowered chipset. Overall, I'm more than pleased with how the phone feels. In fact, I was even surprised by just how snappy it felt, how quick the UI was, and how well optimized everything seems. There are a few particularly useful additions like a side shortcut menu for apps, contacts, and even a ruler. And honestly, I think this is sort of a don't knock until you try it thing. The 675 might not have been the best choice for 2020, but in personally having tried this phone now, I can say that the processor itself doesn't seem to be holding this phone back. Games like Asphalt 9 Legends run really well on it, and the 6GB of RAM I think is probably the most helpful value in the whole package. Powering the TCL 10 Pro is a 4500 mAh battery with fast charging support, like I mentioned earlier. I can't say much for usage yet since I just got this phone, but I think the size of the battery is fine, and given the specs, I'm not expecting any battery issues. So now let's talk cameras, since that's probably one of the most striking physical characteristics of this phone. Around back, the 10 Pro offers a 64 megapixel f1.8 aperture main lens, a 16 megapixel ultra-wide lens, a 5 megapixel macro lens, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. That's a pretty solid setup for a phone in this price range, and it also has the software features and shooting modes to back that all up. You've got a pro mode for getting the most out of the camera, night mode for low light shots, slow-mo, macro, and an easy way to jump to the full 64 megapixel shooting mode, which I actually really like. Most people don't get the most out of their cameras, so adding an obvious option there under the More tab was the right move. You've also got 4K video and enhanced video stabilization as well. The front selfie camera is an equally impressive 24 megapixel f2.0 aperture lens. No 4K selfie shooting, unfortunately, but still plenty of potential here. With a quick sample, you can see that for the most part, things look pretty decent. Skin color is fairly accurate, there's enough detail in the shot, and when we move over to a portrait shot, once again, there's a lot to like. The edges around my face and head are actually really good. My hair gets a bit blurry like it almost always does on these mid-range phones, but honestly, this is a solid selfie camera, and I'm pretty impressed so far. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys later.